being working class a barrier in life? We're throwing that question out, along with the unconscious bias story as well. The BBC announcing a new diversity directive, which will require 95% of staff to complete with unconscious bias training. It also aims for 80% to declare their social class and 50% of LGBT employees to be out at work. The BBC also wants 50-50 split male-female and is in the process of launching a staff census that will be the first for the first time to capture non-binary or non-conforming identities. I don't know why the state broadcaster needs to know all of this stuff. The mandatory requirement for nearly all employees to undertake unconscious bias training is intended to identify people's ingrained biases in the hope they can recognise and eliminate them. Another target is 20% of the workforce to come from BAME backgrounds, 12% disabled, and 100 diverse role models will be identified for a publicity campaign as well. Let's speak to Aaqil Ahmed, former head of religion at the BBC and Channel 4, now Professor of Media at Bolton University and media consultant. Aaqil Ahmed, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. Have you ever been on one of these courses? I'm bound to ask you that first.
I actually have done an unconscious bias course, and I've even given them as well. Do you know what? I have a lot of sympathy for those people that don't think they work, because obviously it depends on the person going into it. They might come out of it with their prejudices confirmed. But I actually think that in general, it's not a bad thing actually, just to kind of like learn about other people's kind of cultures and understand what other people may necessarily believe. Because believe me, you know, the amount of kind of unconscious bias that I've encountered, or that I can or I've seen, or even I have as well. I think we've all got it, and I think just to have a time to reflect on it isn't a bad little thing.
Is the problem, though, that whatever the decent intentions might be behind this, you know, the BBC, I've worked for the BBC, and you know, I know a lot of the background of how they work and what they're trying to do, and it's never. I speak as a white bloke, so I haven't quite got the same qualification as you might have in this, but the BBC never seemed to lack diversity. Certainly when I was there, I'm sure it didn't tick all the boxes as percentages of every single group, but it looked more diverse than many other places I've worked at. And trying to put a number on it, there's a potential with compromising quality there, right? Because you could just end up saying, well, look, we simply cannot find another group, another amount of people for that group. So as a result, we're going to take people who, well, they tick the box of gender or disability, but they're not ticking the box of quality.
You know, Ian, that actually, as an industry, you know, whether it be broadcasting, publishing, whatever it is, I mean, these are very, very competitive industries, and if you can't do the job, you get found out very quickly. So I don't think that's the case. I understand where you're coming from, but actually, I think that's not the case. I think the issue here is whether you're working class background, whatever your ethnicity is, and I think, or whatever or actually understanding the makeup of your organization. I don't think it's a bad thing to know what the makeup is and actually what the socio-economic background might be as well. Because, you know, diversity, for instance, I mean, I wrote about this many years ago. You can basically have diverse, you can have people who are diverse in terms of culturally diverse, but they may be like Rishi Sunak, for instance, you know, they may have gone to privately educated, gone to the right kind of universities, got married into the right kind of families, etc. You know, then the question you start to ask is, how diverse is that person? Because they may be the same as the kind of like the establishment that you already have around you.
I think
so understanding the makeup is really important.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my issue. My issue with diversity is that it's not about colour of skin. If you're talking about cultural diversity, it's got to be about the diversity of the people and where they come from and their views and what they may think about and what they've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, when a former Director General at the BBC talked about it being hideously white, you'll remember those words from Mr. Dyke at the time. What seemed to me, in an effort to try and sort of de-white it a little bit, what seemed to happen, Aaqil, was that the BBC brought a lot of middle-class non-white people in, which was kind of not really addressing the problem. The issue was meant to sort of address, as I saw it, was meant to address the issue of people thinking this media industry is something, that there's a big wall there and I can't get into this. Well, you know, most middle-class people, regardless of colour, don't have that view. So it didn't really tick the box, did it? I mean, it's not all about working-class people, but that's a big area that's been spectacularly missed out.
Well, it is, and working class people aren't all white as well. Obviously, I mean,
No, that's
a lot
my
of
point.
people
Yes,
from diverse
of any
backgrounds
background.
come
Yes.
from, and that's exactly it. I mean, I come from that background that you're talking about. I come from a working class background, and maybe obviously not now because education and work etc. has changed all of that. But that's where I came from, and son of migrants. So in that sense, it's a very different kind of experience, and that's one of the problems you can have with diversity. So why it's important to have that kind of understanding of where your kind of like where your organization, where the workers come from, to understand what the background is. It's really important, because you could be in fact appointing and having a certain group of people who don't need that kind of that help, because what they're not doing is changing things. And actually understanding that, I think, is really, really important. So I actually applaud them for that, and I think all businesses should be doing this, is to understand where your makeup of your staff comes from, because you may be over-serving a certain group rather than understanding what people need. And we've seen that with the lack of coverage that you might have had in the past. And I think we see it now when you look about diverse kind of coverage as well. There are certain communities that don't get as much output about them, yes, but not for them, because I don't think they have enough of a voice at the top table.
How does that work then at the top? I mean, you've sat around those senior management meetings. I mean, there's 1 million Poles live in this country, but I'm guessing that the BBC don't have a quota to reflect that on their output. And I understand that. I mean, where would you stop with that? You'd have.
Well, they don't have a quota for anything like that.
Well, indeed. So what I'm saying is that where does the quota? Does it just stop at race and gender?
No, but there isn't a quota. No, but there isn't actually a quota, and we've got to get away from that. I mean, the only quotas are ones which are reflective of the kind of like the charter. So you'll say you have to do X amount of programming on religion or X amount of programming on the arts. There is no quota that says X amount has to be about Asians or Muslims or Hindus. That's not true.
No, I'm talking about the quota of staff, not the quota of the
quota of staff. Well, it's basically about minority ethnic, and actually that, if you look at the kind of the definition of what minority ethnic is, then if you are white and other, then you are in that minority ethnic group as well. But you're right. I mean, I do understand completely where you're coming from. So even if it's programming or staffing, there will have to be a need for people to, if you, for the sake of argument, have millions of people from a certain group, from Eastern Europe or from Poland or wherever that might be, who are living here, then you would expect at some point for them to be reflected in the programming and the staffing.
Yeah.
Whether you have a quota or not, I don't know. I've got to be honest with you. I'm not particularly sure about that.
So
I've always felt that quotas give you something to work towards, Ian. As opposed to
so the minority, the black and minority, the word minority can cover all sorts of areas there.
Well, it does, because BAME, as it were, black and Asian minority ethnic, can be anything. You can be from a gypsy community, you can be white, other, because that's the one that these are the things. So it's not just about black or Asians; it's about everybody.
It's interesting.
And so you can only do that once you know what the makeup of your staff is.
So I've got I'm from a working class background. I was born in Scunthorpe, though. I mean, does that get me into that group? I mean, don't do the usual jokes either.
I'm from the other side of the
I know you are. I know you are. So I don't think Scunthorpe would other me in that respect.
Well, nobody wouldn't, but it would do. But if we had an analysis of what the makeup of our staff is, and we felt that we didn't have enough, or you didn't feel there was enough people coming from a certain geographical location, socioeconomic background, then it's going to be a benefit, isn't it? Because that's what you want, is to have people who come from those locations, or else how are we going to talk to the people of Scunthorpe?
True, but we just want good people ultimately, right? In the world of TV, you're as experienced as anyone in this world. I know you do other things now, but it underpins your profession. You've been at the top of the tree. You came from a background that wouldn't conventionally have got you there. You know that it's ultimately just about quality, whatever colour.
It's all about quality, but we do need more people who. That's why I applaud this if it works. And that is, you have to have people who come from very, very different backgrounds, whatever that is, whether you're white, brown, black, whatever it is.
And on that point, Aaqil, thank you. Aaqil Ahmed, former head of religion at the BBC and Channel 4, now Professor of Media at Bolton University and media consultant. What do you make of what you heard there? You've got to get more people in. Well, you have. You want first and foremost, good people and the right people for the job, right? 0344 499 1000. You're listening to Ian Collins on Talk Radio.